How do you think publishers are getting on with making new kinds of things for the digital sphere, or kind of doing books in different ways?
I think they're getting on to a certain extent, but there have been a few things that have hampered it up to now. Firstly, is that it requires a lot of investment, and it's difficult to justify a lot of investment if there's not going to be a significant return. The main arguments used have been that, yes, actually you will sell quite a few copies, two, you'll generate a lot of headlines, and so there's a publicity value. But there's nonetheless, it's still a difficult situation for, let's say, a digital advocate within a publisher to be in. Digital departments do not want to be a drag on everyone else. Secondly, there just potentially haven't been the right platforms, but that's obviously now changing, that the era of the tablet is upon us. And I do think now, obviously we all know about the tablet, but there's going to be hundreds of tablets, and they will all be the perfect medium. The reason why browsers as such aren't perhaps the perfect medium is that it's been very difficult to construct business models on browsers, as of course the Times knows all about.
What did you learn from South by Southwest, do you think? What did you come back thinking about?
I learned a lot of things. It was a very steep learning curve. I think one of the things that really struck me was that was how much artists have to say about the future of technology and the future of design and the internet, and how, particularly I think with writers, the science fiction has inspired a lot of the internet, a lot of technologists. How much, for instance, people in theatre have to say about participation, participatory games and media. And I kind of kept coming back to this thing of thinking that if the people who are developing the web or developing technology had more conversations with artists, or had more creative collaborations with artists, I think that would be really exciting for art and for the web as well. Another theme I think which was really interesting was this kind of phrase that seems to be going around, that the screen is boring, where people are trying to kind of move beyond just providing on-screen experiences to using more location-based stuff, mobile-based stuff, pervasive media, to kind of create experiences in the physical world, using the internet to kind of bring people together, or provide a kind of point of co-location, but then having games or having experiences in the real world. So it's kind of the post-digital was the buzz phrase a lot of the time.
What about the way that the sort of discussion around a book, around a text, will become built into it? And do you think publishers have those kind of curating roles?
I'm not actually sure they do, but I think the real question is it desirable for them to have those skills as well? So I think, from a publisher perspective, they haven't been desirable till now, because there hasn't been much perceived value in those. You can't. There's no way you can commodify that. But equally, maybe that's a reason why we might want to protect it. Maybe that's something that we want to leave uncommodified. So I think publishers will like that, in as much as word of mouth is what a publisher lives and dies from. And so if it helps word of mouth, then publishers will be interested. If it doesn't, then I think publishers will be interested in terms of getting a bit of publicity for a book. Otherwise, I think it's something that publishers will often and to a large extent ignore, and maybe that's a good thing, except where it's incorporated into part of the experiences I was just talking about. So you could see that it would become a default thing for an experience to contain the entire conversation, and in fact for that experience to be largely composed of conversation. So I think that's the exception. So I think it's a complicated picture, and it all depends on where you are in that picture, on what you think.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
No problems.
Okay, we've been talking with ifsoflo about building communities of readers around books and ideas. Tell us about what you've been doing with the Roundhouse.
So the Roundhouse came out of a third-year module on critical theory, and it primarily it was an online publishing house, really, that published one edition of a student-led journal, and it kind of created a community in the way that the editorial process was as collaborative and discursive as possible. So the contributors and the editors worked together on that. And since then we've then had a launch for the journal by organising a conference which brought together academics, PhD students, MA students and undergraduates, and anyone really that was interested in, well, critical theory and higher education, but sort of a broad critique of higher education.
Ifsoflo, looking at the role that literature organisations could play in the digital, and what do you think their greatest assets are?
Well, I think generally in the arts, but particularly in literature, there are some really key skills which literature organisations have, which are going to be more and more valuable in this kind of age of abundance when we're surrounded by all this different media. I think the first one is kind of curating, really, selecting, editing and curating really high quality stuff, which is what literature organisations, publishers, people are really good at. The second thing is kind of bringing people together, creating communities, creating discussions around books, around interesting topics. And that's what reader development organisations, libraries, public sector organisations have been doing for years in literature. So they've got those skills, which are increasingly important. And then this other thing is, I think, about storytelling on different platforms, transmedia storytelling, which is really what's starting to emerge as the real kind of growth area in broadcasting, in public service media, in publishing. And literature organisations and writers really know how to tell stories, or really have those basic storytelling skills, which are going to be more and more important, whatever platform you're working on. So I think those three things really put literature organisations in a really good position to take advantage of these opportunities. And I think if book can really help them to kind of identify the opportunities and how to take them, then that's a really key, it's a really crucial thing to do.